when the name Chord paint came about.
For me, it's just like an electric jolt.
It's the real ugly side of humanity, and their music sounds like it. I always wanted to be a band that was approachable to people, that was just regular ass people.
Yo, what's up? So before I start this episode, I want to bring up two really good friends of mine that I've met along the way. They've been the backbone and really the biggest supporters of this podcast since day one. Everything visually you see with this podcast has been done by Wither Designs and Benny Bones Art, and it could be your band next. Check them out on social media, get yourself something unique and original, and yeah, let's do this. I'm a guitar nerd myself, so let's just dive right into the guitars.
All right.
Dunable guitars. I've been eyeing those up for a long time, man, and I'm just kind of curious on where you really cross paths with this guitar. Like, how did it come to be that you would own one?
Well, I actually spoke to Sasha a while ago when we first came to play Los Angeles, and I think it was 2015. And I got talking to Sasha. Oh no, I beg your pardon, it wasn't. It was 2017, and we came to play in America. And got talking to Sasha, and I asked him if he'd make me a Dunable RD because I really liked the old Gibson R2 design.
Mm-hmm.
And he made me an RD, and he made Chris a Thunder clapper bass. And it was just so cool because we turned up and flew into Los Angeles. That was like we played. Our first show was the very next day, and Sasha turned up to the hotel with brand new guitars, and it was like actually a really cool moment. You know, we flew out there. I had one guitar with me, a Gibson Les Paul, and I just really love the design that Sasha has and had for those guitars, and it was like. I mean, they're very popular now. Back then, they were just gaining popularity.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I wanted one straight away, you know, and they're lovely guitars. Really good.
I think the one thing that attracts me to that guitar in specific is like the shape. I would just imagine, I mean, like, I've never had the opportunity to play one, but I mean, it looks very comfortable. Like, I mean, it looks like a Les Paul mixed with like a, I wouldn't call it a Jackson, but like, it just looks like a very comfortable guitar.
Yeah. It is not. Yeah. When I've got a little bit of a belly, and haven't. It's a real concern now for me, or an influence. A deciding factor is like how much of the guitar is there, like sort of like north of the fretboard, you know, that bit that hangs by your belt buckle,
right?
And like certain guitars, such as a Fender Strat, I just couldn't use them anymore because of the amount of body that's sort of like above the fretboard, and my belly gets in the way now. So I quite like the fact that the Dunable guitars and others, you know, some of the designs have like they don't have a lot going on, sort of like just above the fretboard, and I find them really comfy.
So if you had to, so say I was in the market for a new guitar, how would you like sell me on this thing? Like, how does it differ from like one that you could get, you know, from Guitar Center or just some standard guitar shop?
I would say you get a good personal service, especially if you talk to Sasha or any of the other guys he has working with him now. And that particular design, getting it at that price point, which actually is really good, even if you pay like the full price there from Dunable. I think it would be I think it's a bargain because it's like such a cool design to have. The R2 style design in particular is really good, and obviously you get custom options. If you talk to those guys, you can get it made to your specification, which isn't always possible with other brands of guitar, and usually it doesn't take that long to be made either.
Right.
I mean, I've never really had to have such a long waiting time when I can't see the same for others.
I feel like customer service is kind of overlooked with guitars. I mean, they basically every guitar I've gotten, you get like you got to pay like a $200 warranty fee, and
Mm.
then it has to be broken in a certain way for it to be under warranty. And
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay.
I feel like that company in specific, like
Mm.
from what I've heard, they're a little bit more understanding because
Oh yeah, yeah.
they're like coming up. They're going to be a huge freaking brand within the next
Yeah,
couple of
yeah, yeah.
years. I mean, they already are.
I'd say so. Yeah, yeah, they are. And fair play to him because he's a really nice guy, and you can tell he's from you can tell he's a musician himself, and he understands how things are for people who tour with their own instrument. So he gets it. He's really good to talk to, really good to deal with.
So I pulled a bunch of like information from previous interviews. I've been doing this recently where I'll like dissect um you know maybe like quotes that you might have put in there that I found interesting or whatever. So
Hmm. Hmm.
um the one thing that I found was you stated that any success that a band has or will either be is through them getting lucky or already being connected with a few sources. I
Yeah,
mean, and then plus like having good music, obviously.
yeah, of course, yeah. You
So
got to bring some. You got to bring something to the
yeah,
table for it.
you
But
gotta
there's
you gotta bring something,
getting getting noticed
right?
is often through luck and or hard work.
And
Um,
I mean, my biggest thing for you with this is like, do you think it's a little bit harder to get your name out there to operate as a band like it was like back when you started with like social media
yeah,
and all that crazy stuff?
I'd say so. Yeah, because there's a lot of. I mean, there are so many bands. Maybe it feels like that's died down slightly lately, but there seemed to be like it was almost reaching like a fever pitch of bands being started like
Mm-hmm.
all the time, and bands being started from with members of other bands. I don't know, just seemed almost like to be getting out of control or something. I don't know. And yeah, I stand by a lot of what I said there in what you just quoted me on, because I'm just going off my own experience. You know, like whether or not people think we're good now. Obviously, we've done okay for ourselves, and we've released some music that we're happy with, and we've been able to tour and everything. But I think that really us the very like incipient stages of Conan really did
Mm-hmm.
just rely on a bit of hard work and actually getting a bit lucky. Because when
Right.
we like I couldn't find a drummer to play for Love No Money when we first started out. And I just stumbled upon Paul, and he was available, and we just started playing, and we all of a sudden we thought, well, let's just go in the studio and record these songs that we've got, which I'd already had for like 2 years. A lot of the songs that
Mm-hmm.
are on Horse or Battlehammer were existed when I recorded the Battle in the Swamp EP in early 2007. In fact, the 27th of January 2007, I recall we were in the studio, Crash Studios in Liverpool. And I think I remember recording Horse or Battlehammer, and I thought to myself, I didn't really want to do anything with it. And it was only
Mm-hmm.
just through I just thought, oh, yeah, I'll send it out to a few labels and see what happens. But if nothing comes back, then I'm kind of done, because I've been trying to get noticed in other bands before that, and it had been quite a frustrating process getting to that point.
Right.
And I'd already put Conan on ice twice. I'd lost a drummer to a hit and run in the previous band. The drummer that replaced him developed really severe mental health issues, and don't even know where he is now, and his family don't either. And so I'd had like quite a lot of sort of difficult moments on the way to that recording, and I just thought, I just sent it out, and we got a reply back kind of out the blue. I mean, I actually spoke to Greg Anderson as Southern Lord and turned him down. I ended up going with the. Well, he didn't make me an offer, so turning them down is maybe not the right phrase, but they were interested, and I didn't take any further, and I still can't really explain that. I ended up putting it out with Throne Records in Spain, which I think was a good move because we retained the rights to it. Maybe we wouldn't have done that.
That's a topic in and of itself. Like,
yeah.
That is a debate that I've been just curious as to artists like back in the day what they did, because like, for example, like Morbid Angel, Altar of Madness. I'm kind of curious as if like bigger bands like that dropped that, one killer record, if they gave the rights away, because they'd be losing tons of money.
Oh yeah. Well, Conan, we own. I mean, we've licensed our music to Napalm Records, most of it up to now, just through part of our deal, on a worldwide deal. But that expires, I think in 2 years I get Horse of Battlehammer back in my name, Conan's name, and then every 2 years after that, another album comes back into our discography. All right, fair enough. Monos, we already own it, so it'll be Horse of Battlehammer, and then 4 years later, Blood Eagle will come back under our umbrella, and then after that, Revengeance, after that, Existential Void Guardian, and this new album, which we've just finished recording guitars yesterday, that will be released on Napalm, but that'll be the last album with Napalm. But again, we have licensed the rights to them, but only for a limited number of years. And I'm really glad that we did that. And that's luck, because that wasn't something we had to negotiate for. It was something that was sort of given to us, and I accepted that deal without really knowing a lot about the industry. I know a lot more now, but yeah.
So I mean, for the young dudes out that are listening right now,
Yeah.
How would you, or how would I put this to you? Why do you think that bands should fight for the rights for an album for a record deal? I mean, just new bands that maybe that have potential but have no nothing to show for it right now.
Okay, well, what do you think that album is going to be worth in like 10 years? If you still own it, it could be worth quite a lot. If the label owns it, then the most you'll get is some royalties from it. So it's like, if you want to go with a label, because they'll have a PR team and they will of course give you an advance, maybe if you're lucky, then that I would still say release it on a label, particularly your first album or two, because that really gives you a head start with PR. It'll give you access to a depending on the label, of course, you'll have like a ready-made fan base. If you go with a label who releases music like yours, you'll gain fans more quickly. You'll have access to their distribution network, etc. But don't undersell yourself and give the music away because you're desperate to be on a label, because in the long run it'll cost you, and not just in financial terms, but it's a real bummer knowing that you can't just do a repress of that album that you want to, because it's like the 10th anniversary, the label doesn't want to, but you would love to, but the label says no, they won't do it because, I don't know, you got another album coming out in 6 months or something like that. I really strongly think, like, if you're going to license the album, so if you're going to sign to a label, just license the album, or just find a distributor and let them do it. But then, of course, you got to think about the cost of promotion and stock, and you got to pay for it yourself up front. Then, of course. So I mean, my advice is, at least for the first album or two, go with a label and just kind of try and get your feet under the table.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, the built-in audience is right there. But I've had a lot of conversation about just labels in general, on good deals and bad deals, and how bands can succeed or they can get swiped away on their first record. And
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious on what your input is for a good, like, what is considered a good deal to you
Okay.
for
A good
a first record?
a good deal on a first record is you're not tied in for the next two or three. That sounds like when you get offered a 3 album deal, you're not Whitesnake being paid $300,000. You're on a three. Basically, what the label is saying to you, we're going to release your first album. If it's any good, we'll do your second and third. They're not saying, oh, look, here's like loads of money, go and give us. They're not buying 3 albums off you. They're just like having you over the barrel for album number 2 and 3, if it's any good, and that can create uncertainty, which I don't think is helpful, and I don't think it's very good for the creative process being in that position. Try and get a deal which is includes an advance, at least an advance that'll cover the cost of the recording or part of it. Have some sort of provision in there for tour support, because especially if you're a lesser established band, one of the ways in which you will sort of gain reputation is to go on tour with a bigger band. In doing that, you probably have to do that tour for little or no money. You may, like we had, be given the opportunity to tour on a bus. Like we were going to go on tour with Entombed AD, I remember.
Nice.
Yeah, and that would have been awesome. But I don't mind saying it, the deal wasn't the best, in our opinion, at that point in time. Like there was no fee for the shows, and we could go on their bus if we wanted, but we would have to pay per bunk, and so we would have to make merch sales to break even, and
to sleep in, right?
Yeah, exactly, and let them use our backline as well, apparently, just to try and.
Wow!
Yeah, that was one of the things
rough.
We tried to use. Yeah, that wasn't something they insisted on, but to make it bearable financially, we said, well, you can use our backline. We ended up not doing it in the end for various reasons, but the main reason was that it just wasn't going to work financially. We would have had to make merch profit, not just turnover, to break even. And on a tour where, you're with a band who's much bigger than you, you just don't sell anywhere near as much merch than you would do at Euro. You'd sell, playing to 500 Entombed fans, you'd sell probably 1/10 of the amount that you would sell to, I don't know, playing 100 of your own fans. And we learned that lesson when we went on tour Black Label Society, which is an amazing experience. But it was really an eye-opener for the merch.
That was literally the last show that I saw. I saw them with Obituary.
Oh, yeah.
And they played in a gymnasium.
Wow.
Absolutely huge show.
Mm-hmm.
So a little question about you. I saw that you're an avid Iron Maiden fan, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what are some characteristics about that band that really draws you to them?
So the innocence of the music, it's just like it's pure heavy metal, and there's also a strong element of nostalgia there with me. I can't say that I listen to a lot of their newer material. I guess a lot of people do that with bands. But I still have the exact tape cassette of Power Slave that I had when I was 13 years old, doing my paper round back in, 13. I'm 45 now, so 32 years old. I still got it. And they were the band that, for me, got me into metal. Up until then, I thought I was into metal because I listened to Def Leppard and Bon Jovi. and I remember in school, a friend of mine, Mick Dunning, he'd come to our school from another school down the road in Litherland, and I started hanging out with him, and he's like, you should listen to these. And I remember his music taste was quite eclectic. He was into Iron Maiden and Yngwie Malmsteen,
Yeah,
and
Yngwie.
a couple of other albums that I can't quite remember now. But I remember his in now that I'm thinking about it, it was quite like a weird taste of music. But Iron Maiden was one of those, and I remember starting to listen to them, and I thought, wow, this is almost too much. And I think that element of like, oh my god, this is too intense for me. Am I going to be able to cope with this? Is a feeling that I think a lot of people chase now when they listen to extreme music. I'm not saying Iron Maiden are extreme. They seemed it back then. And I think for
especially
me,
their imagery.
Yeah, the old Eddie thing. I remember, and I think in addition to that, when I was like a much younger child, I remember one of my friends when I was a child, his dad must have been listening to Iron Maiden. I remember the age of 4 or 5 seeing the cover art for Run to the Hills.
4 or 5 seeing Eddie, that's terrifying.
Yeah. Seeing the cover art for Number of the Beast, and thinking, whoa, and being like kind of scared by that. So I think that's kind of stuck with me. Just like they really got me into heavy metal. So I listen to them now, and there's like a really strong feeling of nostalgia. Like I'm that 13-year-old boy again, racing home on my bike because my granddad's going to meet me and take me to watch my football team play. And I just, it's like kind of feel good heavy metal. It always has been. So it's kind of unique in that way.
I asked that because me being a guitar player, I was kind of in the same boat. They were like my introduction. And, I don't think I'd like would have picked up the guitar and like took it seriously if I didn't really get into them, because they are just so melodically driven, and like they really feed into the song, And for you, I'm just wondering if they were maybe a band that made you want to go, you know what, I want to write some tunes, and maybe I could do something similar to this.
I think they got me thinking it'd be cool to be like play guitar in a band. But
right, the hair and everything.
Yeah, and just like being like on band and kind of owning it. And I didn't really understand how to articulate that back then. But now I imagine myself as like a 15-year-old boy being quite shy, thinking it'd be a cool way to kind of express myself without really understanding what that meant back then. But it was Nirvana for me. I remember being really like when I first saw Nirvana play Smells Like Teen Spirit on this old TV show called The Word.
Okay.
And you can, if you go to YouTube, you can do like Nirvana, The Word. And I think when they were on that tour, late 80s, early 90s, I think they were with Tad and Mudhoney, I think. Like the tour where they like really started to break, and around the time when they released Nevermind. And they were on The Word, and they did Smells Like Teen Spirit, and Kurt Cobain said into the mic, Courtney Love of the band Hole is the best fuck in the whole world, or something like that. And I remember watching them thinking, whoa. Like I was playing guitar at that point, or trying, but really failing to find any sort of progression. And I had guitar lessons at the time, and I was trying to write my own stuff, and nothing was coming of it. But then I saw like Nirvana playing, and I thought, whoa, I'd really love to be able to play like that. That really got me excited, because it seemed accessible to me. Like I've never listened to Iron Maiden and thought, oh yeah, I could write riffs like that or play that.
Yeah, not me either. No way.
No, I can play like the odd thing, but mostly not.
You see Kurt Cobain, and like, I mean, his guitars are not very technical driven at all. No. So I mean, I totally understand what you're saying by this. Like, like he just looks like a regular dude. Like, just scraggly hair and a t-shirt and jeans. You know,
and he's got all these people going crazy for him.
And he didn't have like a like the Motley Crue look, like he wanted to be something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he was totally against that kind of sort of like big rock star mentality. I since learned, after listening to his interviews and stuff. But I just remember just watching them play, And I just thought, whoa, that is so much going on there, and yet so understated. And I thought I could play probably riffs like that, and even if I got 1 inch along that mile-long trajectory that they're on, that would be like way more than where I was at that point in time.
Right.
That's how I tried. That's hard for me to explain that, but like I thought if I can just get like one speck of sand on sort of like the beach that Nirvana are on, then that would be like so cool, and I would find that so fulfilling. And it was a really big driving factor for me. So I started trying to learn Nirvana riffs, and I remember it was the first time I learned like a 2-finger power chord, and I wasn't so dexterous, so I couldn't really do it very easily. And remember going to a shop in Manchester, of all places, to buy a leather jacket. My granddad had given me £100 for my 18th birthday. And I remember the guy in the shop saying, "What are you getting this for?" So my granddad's bought me like a thing, and then we got talking, and I explained that I was playing guitar, and he drew on a piece of paper how to form the classic power chord.
Oh wow!
And I was like, wow. So I mean, I wish I had that piece of paper still, because I remember taking that home
amazing.
and thinking, yeah, I remember I think he must have asked me what bands I was into, and I must have mentioned Nirvana, and I was saying I was learning how to play, and he showed me how to do the power chord, and then I went home and I just learned how to play that particular chord shape, and then I started learning to play Green Day and was it the Foo Fighters? Maybe not so soon, but like all of this, and then I started being able to write my own stuff then, because that same shape you can move all over the fretboard, and it was Nirvana really was like the catalyst for me, like not wanting to play guitar but being able to, and I'll always remember that.
That is amazing. I want to bring up a small story about you. Bring up Nirvana. I haven't brought this up on the podcast ever. So when I was a lot younger, I was huge into trying to get a hold of artists, musicians, and in bands that probably are unreachable, right? So I sent a letter out to the bass player in Nirvana, right?
Oh yeah.
And I moved multiple times, so the letter would never get to me, right? If he even sent something back. After 4 or 5 years of sending it, I got something in the mail from him.
Wow. What did it say?
He sent me a big, long thing about like science. It was a very like trippy note from like a book or something. And then he sent me like a card with his autograph and stuff, and he basically just said, "Hey, thanks for supporting what I've done." And yeah, I was like, "Holy shit, man!"
That's amazing.
But I just wanted to bring that up. I wanted to bring that up to you because, like, it just goes to show how that band like didn't sell out.
Yeah. Totally. They're still nice people.
They're still willing to send a letter out to a fan.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was in the same building as Chris Novoselic once.
Oh, Chris? That's awesome.
At the same building, but didn't get anywhere near. His band were performing at the start. No, what's the name of the... we played in Portland, I think in 2018, and his band were playing there as well, but on a different floor of the venue we were in. And I'm kicking myself now that I didn't go and watch them play, because it would have been so easy.
Yeah.
Never did it. I feel so bad about that.
So I got one other quote that I found here. You know, you were diagnosed with depression and prescribed with antidepressants. I'm not sure when. Like, how old were you during this?
That would have been 2000, so I would have been 24.
Okay. And you decided to not take them, which I think is a smart move. And my question to you is, like, what advice could you give to artists and musicians struggling with the same thing? I mean, like, I personally am not very fond of antidepressant medication. I had a friend pass away because of that. And I'm just curious. Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious as to some wisdom you would give, because I mean, a lot of musicians are going through this, and you don't need medication. You don't need medication.
Yeah, I think that if you can, I think developing your own sort of methods of release is a much better way of better way of dealing with it than taking medication. Now, I was I was going like I was anxious. That's my problem, and I honestly believe it was because of smoking marijuana from my late teens. It made me a bad student at university. That put pressure on me. I passed my course, but only just, and I just smoked pot all the time, and I wanted to play the band, and I started to feel like I started having really bad anxiety attacks, and my grandmother died, and I almost overnight, out of nowhere, became obsessed with my own heartbeat and pulse and my heart, and I was convinced, just literally, within 2 or 3 days of my grandmother dying, that I also was going to die of a heart attack in the street, which is how my nan died. And I just, like, I'd wake up in the morning, and as soon as I opened my eyes, the first thing that came into my mind was, shit, what's going to happen now? I just had that classic unexplained sense of dread. So I'd go and brush my teeth, or go get dressed or whatever, and I'd get palpitations because I wasn't breathing right. Adrenaline kicks in, tells you to start breathing, you idiot. I mean, that's your body's way of, and that would, my heart sort of jumping into life. Every single time it happened, I'd be like, oh shit, something's happening, I better. And I remember this one morning I phoned the doctor and I said, look, I was actually just on the toilet, and then it happened, and I was like, oh shit, it's happening again. So I rung the doctor, and the doctor said, go to the hospital in case it's something. I went to the hospital. I was sat on a gurney in a gown. I'd had an ECG, which obviously was fine. And a doctor come up to me, a heart doctor, and said, look, your heart is absolutely fine. I think what this is anxiety. So I, around about that time, I spoke to the doctor and was prescribed antidepressants. Went home to my mum and I said, hey mum, I just been to the doctor about that, because she knew I was going through this like unexplained sense of impending doom, and I was convinced I was going to die soon. And she said, look, just don't take them. I don't know what she based that on, but she just said, look,
right.
don't take
that's
them,
what I was going to ask, because I mean, if you're saying you were 24 at the time,
yeah,
like what evidence was around that basically said like, hey, you probably shouldn't take this medication.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of anything. I wasn't aware of anything like that, but my mum said not to. Maybe she, at some point in her, I mean, my mum's still alive, obviously, but maybe she'd had a similar situation growing up. I just don't know. I should ask her, actually. But she basically said, don't do it. And so I never did. Now, those like palpitations didn't go away straight away, but I definitely felt more in control. I started to rationalize them. I said, I'm not breathing right. So my body, without me realizing it, is panicking, and it's sending adrenaline to my heart, which is making it jump into life, which is making me take a deep breath. And that's just a normal thing. Your heart is fine. You've just ran up the stairs. Why didn't you die of a heart attack then? Your heart is fine. And I started rational, like even those simple things, I was starting to make myself sort of almost like a split personality. I was saying, don't be stupid. You're going to be okay, sort of thing. And so it was really helpful for me talking to, almost like talking to myself and saying, the doctor you've just been to see that said that your heart's fine, etc. Not so long after, I mean, I'd just entered a relationship with my ex-wife, Vicky, who was a community psychiatric nurse at that point, and she sort of helped me with things, so that was like really helpful too. And but I honestly think a lot of that was caused by smoking too much weed, and just some stressful situations in terms of university. I put myself under a lot of pressure to do well at university, and I didn't do so good. And I think I just kind of got a bit depressed because of that, which made me want to smoke weed more, which made me feel more anxious. So,
Yeah.
I've never had a professional ever sort of unravel all of that, but that's how I look at it now. I don't smoke weed anymore, and I feel completely different. And when I look back at my life, those like patches in my life where have, in retrospect, not been so steady as a personality. I've always been those times when I've smoked a lot of pot. So I just don't do it anymore, and I really feel a big difference. So my advice to somebody who may be not feeling great psychologically would be, I wouldn't ever tell anyone what to do in their own spare time recreationally, but I would suggest having them talk to someone. But talk to two different types of people. Talk to someone who cares about them, and talk to someone with a professional opinion, and sort of rationalize what they're both saying. And you'll find a lot of common ground, and you can really find that common ground soothing, because they can't both be wrong if they're both telling you you're going to be fine, but you need to do this and that. Just listen to what people are saying.
So I think that the one thing nowadays is like there's just a big stigma around like talking about this with males. Like I mean,
Oh yeah.
I feel like dudes just go, like that isn't very masculine to
Oh
talk
yeah.
about, anxiety or depression. It's like, do you know
Mm-hmm.
how many musicians are writing about this, but
Yeah.
you're
Would never
afraid to like
talk about
talk
it.
about right,
Mm-hmm.
like what is something that you've learned about this whole stigmatism? Do you think that you know it's something that you got to fight by yourself, or like how do you go about that?
Well, I would not pay any attention to any perceived stigma, because it really, the reality of it is, when you open yourself up to people who care about you, and actually passing acquaintances on Facebook, for example, a lot of people try and talk about it openly on there. But if
Right.
you open yourself up to family members or friends or the guys, I'm sure like 99.9% of the time you'll get a big hug, and you'll get people who express love and care for you, and it's really helpful to talk about it. It's always been really helpful for me to talk about it, especially in these interviews now. I mean, I don't have any of those issues now, thankfully, and
Right.
I put that down to being open about it, and to not being afraid to speak about it to a select group of people. And I would urge anyone else to do the same. And if they don't have such a group of sort of personal contacts that they can talk to, speak to someone, speak to someone in a professional capacity, because there are people out there who can help. In the UK we have Relate. We have a lot of different sorts of charity organisations which can help people rationalise difficult periods in their lives. And I've lent on one or two of them in the past, and they've been really, really good. And I find it really soothing to talk to people about it. And I've been there once or twice when other people have come to me with their own issues, and it's I always feel really grateful that they've opened up to me, and that it creates a stronger bond in terms of the friendship or the relationship. And
Right. Yeah.
so it can only do good opening yourself up to somebody if you're not feeling good. So that's my advice. It can only do good.
So I really appreciate you talking about that openly, because I
Yes.
feel like I said, I mean, like people just look past it. I mean, like
Yeah.
somebody listen. I know for a fact one of the listeners that are listening right now are going through it, but just don't want to talk to somebody about it. Because I mean,
Yeah.
I've been in the same boat. You've been in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
Musicians struggle all the time, but it's just one of those things that it's hard to bring up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but it's not something you have to do on your own, though.
Yeah.
So it's then there are people out there who can who can who can help, whether that's in a professional or a personal capacity.
So the last one I got for you is, you have a recording studio called Skyhammer Studios and a record label called Black Bow
That's it.
Records.
Yeah, the studio's gone now.
Oh, the studio's gone. What happened to the
Yeah, the
studio?
studios. Well, my sold the house, so
Okay.
my wife and I, my ex-wife and I owned the house, and that had the studio around the back in the grounds. It was an old coach house, and when we got divorced, we sold the house, of course. So the studio now is no longer. Chris is still doing his thing. He now works down at Fowl Studios down in North Mid Wales, which is where we recorded Horseback Battle Hammer, Monos, the split with Slamatics, and where we've just been to record the new album. But yeah, Blackbow Records is still very much going.
So off of that, I wanted to see, what is the biggest like learning curve that has been, being from the dude running a record label to the guy on stage actually making the noise.
Do you mean? How do you mean?
The biggest learning curve of just like trying to be a businessman from being the actual like artist.
Okay. I think for me, try not to get like too into the business side of it, so that you isolate yourself from the people who respect you for the music that we write.
Mm-hmm.
Because an issue for me, I noticed, was I was working a lot with bands who we would play shows with, and I found myself being too keen to, like, say, offer someone, oh, I'll release that for you, and I seem to do that a lot. I'm not in that same frame of mind anymore, so I don't make that mistake anymore. I release less often, and sort of don't overcommit anymore. So I think really the biggest thing that I learned is to try and keep the two separate, and try not to release music by bands that I'm friends with too often, with the exception of Slamatics, who of course I'm really big friends with, and I've released a lot of their their recent material, and that's about it really. I'm not sure there's too much to learn in terms of how the two things play off against one another, because it doesn't make me enjoy playing any less. It doesn't
Right.
make me see myself any different when from being on stage. But it's helped me understand just how lucky Conan are, really, in terms of where we are, in terms, like, where we're at in terms of sales and response from people who work in PR and press. Because I've released some music by other bands where we've used good PR people, and certainly not skimped on the costs associated with PR, and they've not really had the same level of attention, and that, which has surprised me most of the time. But it's just made me realize just how lucky I am, really, to be in a band that has been, like, well received, and sort of has fostered sort of a long-term sort of reputation. I realize now how hard it is. And going back to what you were saying earlier on about bands who are starting out, how do they sort of get out of the traps?
And there's a lot of them.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of traps.
And I think it's because what I had to pull away from is I want to help everyone. I want to, if I could, then, and money wasn't an object, I'd be putting music out for almost every band that came to me wanting a release, but it doesn't do them any favors. There's no point them pressing an album and me spending £4,000 on it and them not tour because they don't have the reputation yet or they can't. And then I sell 10 copies. They just get sad because they think they've annoyed me because I've not sold anything and it doesn't work. So I think just I've gotten a lot better at sort of judging which bands I should work with. Whether or not I like them is another matter. So you've got to be a bit more, you got to look past the friendship. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like you knowing and wanting to work with the band would make the recording sound a hell of a lot better too. I mean, there's a studio near me where they take in any clients and you can tell that they try a lot they try on the ones that they like, and then the ones that they don't like, you can obviously tell that they just click record and walked away.
Yeah, exactly. They don't spend all that time sort of say, do that again, tune up. Like Chris is the producer, you say. I've never been a producer, and Chris was the chap who worked in the studio. I owned it, but he was always the one who did all of the technical work. But I know from experience of recording with Chris that he's like really diligent no matter what band it is. But I can imagine in some studios there will be artists who may sort of get a different level of service than others, and also depends how much you're paying the producer. So, some producers who are getting paid a lot of money aren't necessarily worth it. I guess you just got to find the right person.
They just might have, one really good press album that got word. That's why they're getting paid.
Yeah. I've seen that. I've seen that happen. Someone's gone in with like a big name producer, and it's like it's come out and it's like it's not like it's okay, but it's not amazing.
Right. They lost their ears like 20 years ago.
Yeah. I think people just go for a producer because of their name rather than, how good their last release was. And that's a shame. We were talking about our next album. We want to go down to Rockfield Studios and at least record the drums there. I mean, Chris would be the producer for it, of course. But go to Rockfield where, Black Sabbath recorded and others. It's a really famous studio here in the UK. So I think that's what we're going to do on our next album.
That would be cool. It's really good. I mean, the one thing I read was, every album you try to make your sound like, make the sound different. Mm-hmm. Every album you're trying to evolve. Not obviously you're going to have roots, but I mean the actual sound of it. So do you travel a lot for your records? Like, do you go to different locations specifically? No. Okay. You stick with the same one?
Yeah. We've only ever recorded in 3 studios. Horsehead Battlehammer and Monos, and the split with Slomatics. We recorded at Fowell Studios down in Mid Wales. Then if you go to the split with Bong Ripper, we recorded at this small studio in Ellesmere Port above a kebab shop. It's the worst load-in you've ever seen. And and then we did Blood Eagle and Revengeance and Existential Void Guardian at Skyhammer Studio. So just, I just make a coffee in the morning and I'd pop into the studio. It was awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's got to be like that's got to be the best creative flow ever,
Yeah.
So relaxed.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. It was awesome. And then our latest album, we've been down to Fowell Studio again, so it's like come full circle. But I'd like to get to a position again at some point when I've got a studio again at home. That would be great to bring Chris there to produce us, but I'd probably make it more like a rehearsal room than a commercial recording studio. But in terms of the consistency, I've on every album so far, apart from Existential Void Guardian, I've used Chris's old Sun Model T, and it's like always sounds like it's about to die, and we have everything dimed on it, but it just got that particular sound, which is on every album, and it's amazing, really, that it's apart from the last album when, for some reason, I decided I want to use a load of solid state amps.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah,
That's a big surprise to me.
yeah. I had this Hillbish Sun Beta clone into like a solid state power amp, and I think I mixed that with a PV 5150. We thought we wanted to have like more of a metal sound on that last album, and I mean it's cool. It is what it is. But on our latest album, we've gone like flat out, like blown out fuzz with the
That's
Sun
great.
Model T again. But we've got like a tighter sound to contrast with that from my Mesa Boogie power amplifier. I had Ned Clayton. I don't know if you know Ned Clayton, but he makes the Hex cabs over in America, and he works with Gently Dendley to do the Micro T amplifiers, and he made me this. Yeah, he made me this rack mounted clone of the preamp section of an old Matamp GT 120, and it sounds just really good. So I've got that now into a Mesa Boogie twin power amplifier, so I can run 2 full stacks if I want, or a full stack and an 810. You know, it's got like a stereo output. So I used that on the new album, and it actually died about 10 minutes before the end of it. So we had to like tone match it with some Marshall amplifier, which seemed like a really unlikely candidate, but we pulled it off.
So my funny question to all guitar players is, do you feel like you've found your tone? And like,
I feel like I found. Yeah, go on.
Do you feel like you found like the tone that you'll stick with for the rest of your career? Because every time I ask that, they say no.
Yeah, I kind of think so, but then I feel weird saying it, so probably not. Like the fuzz pedal, distortion pedal I use right at the moment, I always come back to it and I love it. So I don't know what would have to happen for me to decide not to use that. Although I didn't use it on Existential Void Guardian because we're going for this like tighter metal sound. So I used this HM2 clone that I had and some other blown out fuzz pedal. I don't know. I think I'm quite. All I say is I'm quite happy with how I sound right now. But I've gone on record saying that when I was using solid state amps. So I don't know whether I'll commit to that just yet. I'm pretty much. It's like I feel like I own the car that I want now, but I might change the wheels every now and again. That's probably as far as I could go with it.
Exactly. The guitar players that say yes, I don't believe them.
No,
because
it's half the fun.
I'm always finicking. I mean, I have an angle, and I'm like super satisfied with that. But when it comes to recording, I'm always finicking. I'm never happy. Never.
Yeah. I used an old green Sovtech Big Muff on one of the channels. Yeah, one of the channels on this latest album, and that sounds great as well. It's just like crushingly heavy, not as articulate or with as much flavor as the Fuzz Throne, which is also based on a muff. But that old Big Muff, the Sovtech green Big Muff is just like insane. But I like experimenting with stuff in the studio, but I feel like it was, I probably won't stray too far from what I've got now.
So the last thing I'll hit you with before we head off is being a guitar player and always, wanting gear. If you had to pick something up tomorrow, if you were given $500, what would you spend it on?
If I was given $500
for gear,
so that's only about £380.
Okay.
So I would probably go for another Mesa Boogie 295 power amplifier
Okay.
because they're super cheap and they sound really good and they're really versatile. So that's a really boring answer, I think. But for me, it's what I've really discovered using like this type of power amplifier is you just have to take that to a show. You don't have to have like two heads if you want to run like two full stacks. And
Right.
because each channel can have a different impedance, I now have like a full stack at 4 ohms off one channel, and I'll run a half stack at 8 ohms off the other channel. And I'm really enjoying that freedom. So sorry if that's boring, but
No, no, no.
that's
That's good. I mean,
yeah,
like I don't even know what I would buy. I mean, like
yeah,
I've I've got my angle. I'd probably buy something for recording
hmm
because, like, I don't know. I've got an XFX preamp
yeah. Oh
processor.
yeah.
Are you familiar?
hmm I've heard of
Um,
AXFX. I've not used one though.
so I mean, it's just a module that it'll give you a billion choices for tones, and
Okay. Yeah.
it's such a rabbit hole. I mean, if you start
hmm
recording without guitar amps just for demos,
Yeah.
you can buy so many VSTs, plugins, etc.
I do that. Yeah.
These
I've got Reaper.
I got Reaper too.
Yeah. I recorded a lot of what you hear on the Ungraven EP, the first one with the drum machine. That's actually just me in Reaper. So I beg your pardon. That's just me. Guitars recorded in the studio, but initially I recorded all the original demos using using Amplitude and Reaper and Easy Drummer.
Easy Drummer. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
that too. I mean, those two programs, I tell you, I mean, I've tricked a lot of my friends by saying,
hmm
"Hey man, is this a real drum kit? Let me know. Hey, is
Yeah.
this a
Yeah.
real bass? Let me know." And they tell me that it's a real drum kit. And I'm
uh,
thinking to myself, I'm like, how do I justify going to a studio when I'm literally tricking these people that are drummers and
yeah.
they think it's a real drum kit?
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
It's unbelievable what
hmm
technology is with music
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yes. I mean,
Um,
when it's all mixed and mastered, you'd never know.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, but if you have a group of guys and you're playing music together, you should take advantage of that and write a
Yeah.
record. Don't be
Yeah.
don't be having MIDI if you got a drummer. Come on.
No. I mean, make the odd demo. A lot of this album was written. A lot of the riffs were written by me playing, to a click or to a drum pattern on
Uh,
Easy Drummer on my computer. So I mean, at the beginning of lockdown, I built a PC, bought all the
yeah.
bits, built it, and I've got like
Same.
a bloody
that's
decent
that's
monitor.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I got a credit card, £1,000, and I thought, I'm just going to spend all of this on a PC. So I did, and I've not looked back. But a lot of the demos that came of it is because I had my Gibson Les Paul hanging on the wall next to me. I got a couple of studio monitor speakers, a decent audio interface, which is right next to me now. What is it? It's a Audient ID14, and I
Okay.
just plugged straight into that and just recorded using Amplitude. And it was like really important that I was able to do that. Otherwise, this album would have been months behind where it is now.
Now, previous material. I mean, you just said that you bought this computer. Previous
hmm
material. What did you do for writing?
It was all either I'd hum songs into my phone. I still did that, but I followed that up with recording on the computer. I would hum songs into the phone, or we would write stuff during sound checks because we toured so much up until COVID. We would, come up with riffs in sound check. We'd record it on our phone, and then we got to the studio. For example, Existential Void Guardian, Johnny had only just joined the band. We were on tour with Monolord. We had a few ideas. we came home from that tour, went straight into the studio the next day, and we recorded the bones of that album over the next 2 or 3 days. Johnny went home for a couple of weeks. He came back, and then we sat down and recorded the album proper. And so that was done like kind of on the fly. But prior to that, Revengeance and Blood Eagle before that, that was more a traditional rehearsing
writing it out,
and refining it.
Hoping you remember it.
Yeah, exactly. Or actually remembering it, because you play it that often. We practice like every week or two. Particularly with Blood Eagle and Monos before that, we would rehearse every week. And
yeah, you're not forgetting that.
No way. But we like carrying a 4x12 up like 4 flights of stairs at the rehearsal studio.
Holy shit!
There's no way I could do that now. But that's what I would do. I'd get everything out of the van, up the stairs on my own, and Christ, I couldn't do that now. I'd struggle to get up the stairs in the house nowadays.
I got to send you a photo after this of a recent show I went to of this guy going up a flight of stairs with an 8x10. It is one of the most horrific pictures I've ever taken in my whole life. Like, this guy is struggling so much. And like the gig had like 10 people. And I was like, this is pure. I was like, this is dedication, man.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's terrible. I would, no way.
But the 8x10s are what bass players use nowadays. So, I mean, like, if you don't show up with one, like, I don't know. It's a whole image thing, I guess.
Yeah. We used to have this this cab, a PV cab called a PV 3620, and it was a 218 and a 210 in the same cab, and it was as big as a Pac-Man arcade machine. It was ridiculous, and you'd have to carry it. The handles on it were old, sort of like they'd like shrunk slightly, so you could barely get your hands underneath them to pull it up the stairs, and that thing was insanely heavy. But the Ampeg 810, I think, is the king or the queen of awkward load-ins, because there's just no nice way to hold those things. They're terrible.
What is what's like a horror story that with loading in that you've come across? Like, I'm assuming like something happened during the winter, because that's the worst time for loading.
Yeah, let me see now. Horror stories at loading in. Let me think for a minute. There's probably been that many loading in the rain, or like I think once we played in I think our only show in Pittsburgh, we had to like
that's not far from me.
Oh, isn't it? Okay. I was listening to your interview with Carl, actually, from Memoriam.
Oh, he's such a good dude.
Ah, yeah, he's cool. But I think you said you were somewhere up near Niagara Falls. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, nice. We've been there. Horror stories at loading in. Honestly, I think I gave myself a hernia on one tour, because I actually did develop an umbilical hernia. I think it's probably from just lifting this 215 in and out of venues. But yeah, I can't think of any actual horror stories. I guess loading in's always terrible. It just depends on how many stairs there are. So I don't know.
Yeah,
we just kind of get on with it. Never really had anything too crazy.
I think the one thing that I find extremely funny, this was after I bought all of my gear, is just seeing one mic on that 4x12. It's just being it's like, damn, man, I could have just bought like a 1x12 and I would have been all set. Like,
yeah, it's the worst thing. And we played the show once in London, very early on, and the bar owner stood on the stage with us and was sort of riding the volume on the amp as we were playing. So there's the photos of the show. You got the bar owner with his hand on the volume, like turning it down, probably during whatever part it was. That's kind of crazy. But like carrying gear in, and you're only like, they say, oh, you can't use that, or
because it's too loud.
Yeah, we played Doom versus Stoner. Okay, so that's a festival in the UK, and we were told we couldn't have a full stack. We had to have
What?
both cabs on.
Are you
we had to
kidding
have-
me?
No, seriously, we had to have both cabs on the ground. And I was like, what? It's called Doom versus Stoner. Like, the classic thing is, like, Doom metal, full stacks, volume. So you can see
11.
if you... Yeah, your volume on 11, yeah. But you got to have we had to have both cabs on the ground, so I had to have 2 half stacks. Every time I think about that now, it's just, like, crazy. Well, that time in Holland when we played a show and it's like a raised stage. I think it was Into the Void festival. And I had 2 full stacks, and one of the sound guy, or was it one of the stage hands, came and put like a foam baffle across the bottom 2 412s because the volume coming out of them was too loud for the people who were sort of in the pit, but at ear level with that 412. I've never ever seen that before. Yeah, that was good.
I think it's the one thing I've learned about the music that you play versus like death metal or I don't know, just general metal in general is Doom players like to play extremely loud.
Yeah.
And I totally understand why, because the amount of because it's such slow music, the amount of impact on one like beat has to be loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
that comes from playing. That comes from playing shows. Yeah, sorry to jump in there, but like that's from playing shows where you don't have a PA. You're playing in the practice room or somewhere, and you just want to crush everyone. So you play like full stack loud as you can. But I'm like nowadays, like when we're playing at a show, if it's a show where there's a PA, I will like kind of back off the volume a little bit so that the venue can put the guitar through the PA. And I think that always works. Not also that, but also the fact that if you're playing low tunings and you're playing slow stuff and it's ringing out, at certain frequencies, the cabs will vibrate off one another. And
and the snare.
Yeah, the snare will just keep going. Yeah, so I don't go too loud now because that having to turn around with some like fear that your cab's going to slide off, and it has. That like an amplifier's fallen off the top of the cab before more than once, and it's just not worth the stress. So I always turn down a little bit now and just let the sound guy tell me when it's loud enough.
I feel like the Doom guys that go on the road have to be guarding their ears extremely well because, I mean, I would be ringing for at least like 5 days after. Like, do you wear earplugs during shows anymore, or you?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I've got a set. Yeah, I have to. I've got a set of molded, like custom made in-ear ones. Yeah, there's a company over here called ACS Custom, and I think they cost me £140. And I just pop them in at the beginning of the show. Somehow I've not lost this pair. I think they're my like 4th set, but I've had them for 4 or 5 years now. But I wouldn't ever play without them now unless it's a big festival and there's lots of space between me and the cabs. Like our first show back after lockdown, literally our first show for 18 months was at this huge festival called Bloodstock in the UK. And,
man, I want to be there. I wish I could go there. I've never been to that festival.
Yeah, it's cool. And we played the tent, and we played just before Napalm Death. It was a really good slot. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to enjoy this. And it was like the equivalent of sitting down to watch a TV show and like undoing your top button on your jeans. You're just like completely self-indulgent. I thought, you know what, I'm not going to wear my earplugs. I'm just going to play, and it was awesome. But yeah, 9 times out of 10 I'll wear them because it's just not worth it, especially on tour. You do that like 2 or 3
you're doing
nights
it every night.
Struggle. I've got permanent tinnitus, but it'll never go away. But at least it's not as bad as it could be if I didn't wear the earbuds.
So, yeah, I mean, we've killed this podcast. We've went over some good things, and cool. Whenever you have a new release, you're welcome back on.
Yeah, man. Thank you.